7:47 is the time. I'm Roger Hudson, news director here at KTRH. Matt taking a few days off. The entire Houston morning team here. If you're listening on KTRH.com, also on the air, or even on iHeartRadio, we welcome you and thank you for joining us. We've been talking about it. Shouldn't surprise many people, all the bombings and attacks that currently have been taking place over the last several weeks as the U.S. left Iraq and Afghanistan, or at least Iraq. Joining us right now is one of our favorites, Torie Clarke. She's a former Secretary of Defense assistant under Donald Rumsfeld, one of our favorites. Good morning, Ms. Clarke.
Good morning, you guys. How are you?
We're doing okay. Hey, as I saw this, it surprised me, but probably not an insider like you, to see all this additional violence. I mean, in 1 week outside of Baghdad, 69 people killed. Can we link this to the U.S. pulling out of Iraq?
You can, and you might be right, and you might also take the long-term view and say, look, the factions within Iraq have been fighting for hundreds and hundreds of years. Nature abhors a vacuum, so I think some of the troublemakers will move into the lack of presence, if you will, of U.S. forces and try to take advantage of that. It's a messy process.
It is. And Torie, we understand today that an al-Qaeda front group is actually claiming responsibility. Are they working in a sense in concert in an attempt to push the Sunnis and Shiites to a breaking point in Iraq?
Oh, they love turbulence. I mean, we can't say because obviously they're not communicating with us what they're really intending to do, but they are the best at exploiting trouble and exploiting weaknesses in the system and looking for any opportunities to gain a footing once again.
Now, as you look at this, I mean, to me, a layman, as I'm watching this really looks like a coordinated series of attacks. And from what I understand, these groups do not get along. So is the U.S. and our vacuum from there, are we uniting these groups to be able to kind of get together and do these coordinated attacks?
The short answer is I doubt it.
Right.
Whenever you give any bureaucracy of any kind a lot of credit for giant conspiracies, we know it's not true. They're just incapable of it. I think it tends to be more a general sense. Al-Qaeda is very good at exploiting vacuums, if you will. They're very good at seizing these opportunities. I think the bigger question is what size and kind of presence for the U.S. do we want there? John McCain has been very, very clear. He thinks drawing out the U.S. forces was a big mistake. We should have gotten the status of forces agreement to protect our forces. There are others who say the only way you're going to have a lasting and relevant peace in Iraq is if the Iraqis themselves own it. It's truly organic. I happen to subscribe to that theory, but you have to be on the ground and really have up-to-date information to know when is the appropriate time for us to pull out completely.
Absolutely. We're speaking with Torie Clarke, former Secretary of Defense, aide to Donald Rumsfeld. Ms. Clarke, if you'll hold on, I want to talk to you about that. I want to talk about the future of Iraq without the United States there. 7:52 is the time. We're talking about the increased violence in Iraq since the U.S. pulled out. Joining us, one of our favorite guests, Torie Clarke, former Secretary of Defense under Donald Rumsfeld. Well, Ms. Clarke, we talked about Iraq and us pulling out and the violence. Let's talk about the future of Iraq minus the United States. As I watch the debates, and Ron Paul interests me because his argument is we should never have been there, and leaves a lot of contractors there. Matter of fact, 3 times, according to him, 3 times the number of military. Is this the way to go? Are we still there, really?
Well, we're there in different ways. I actually take some comfort from that, quite honestly. I disagree with Ron Paul about this. I take comfort in the fact that General Odierno, who's the current Army Chief of Staff, is in contact with Maliki and trying to counsel him through this political crisis, if you will. I take comfort from the fact that we have intel assets on the ground and engaged. I think that's a good thing, and I think it's a reflection or a manifestation, if you will, of what 21st century national security is like. It's not these neat, clean wars that have a clean beginning and an end. So I think it's a very real, practical thing going forward.
And Secretary Clarke, it does appear that there were tools left behind, and I don't mean physical tools, but tools for police and authorities there in Iraq to handle some of these situations better. Is that accurate?
Sure, and we've helped them a great deal with training, probably never as much as we would like. There are only so many hours in the day. But absolutely, because the goal always has been, whether it was the Bush administration or the Obama administration, the goal has always been to try to help the Iraqis manage and run this country on their own.
There was a lot of criticism, I know you know it because you were in the Pentagon at the time, that the Bush administration, Cheney, Rumsfeld, did not have an exit strategy. Do you agree with that? And do you think the exit strategy that the Obama administration has implemented, do you think that was the correct one?
Again, I think I think 21st century warfighting and the exit strategies that should go along with that are just nowhere near as neat and as clean as we all kind of grew up with and we read about and we saw the movies about. It's a much messier process. I'm quite confident the exit strategy for the Bush administration was always give the Iraqis the tools, the information, the training, the resources that they need so they can do this for themselves. Did it get executed perfectly? Of course not, but it's a messy, messy world. And I think the Obama administration, despite all its criticism of the Bush administration during his campaign, has largely tried to carry out the same policies.
Well, I appreciate your time as always. Insightful, smart. I really, really appreciate it. Torie Clarke.
Thank you, too. Take care.
Yeah, absolutely. You have a great new year. Torie Clarke, former Secretary of State under Donald Rumsfeld, one of the smartest ladies I know. I appreciate her joining us this morning.